Currently with me, Derek Sloan, leader of the Ontario Party in Ontario. It says in the name. How are you doing, Derek?
Hey, I'm doing really well. Thanks for having me here.
Great. So, Derek, you are at the inquiry today for the first time since the past 3 weeks. What motivated you to come to Ottawa?
Well, obviously, I've been watching it through the news and in other ways. But today, a very good friend of mine, Tom Marazzo, was testifying. I wanted to be here to support Tom in person. And obviously, say hi to the other people who were there, along with Tamara Lich and Chris Barber and people like that. So it was a good day and some interesting testimony.
That's right. I think Tom's testimony really spoke to the people of Ontario, to the people of Canada. I think, as I mentioned with Tom earlier, that's how a lot of Canadians are feeling. They're feeling let down by the police. They're feeling let down by the government, by mainstream media. Is that one of the reasons why you were motivated to run for the Ontario Party in the last elections?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I believe my goal is to rejuvenate politics in Canada at every level. And I may not be able to, be a participant in every way in Canada in that, but I like to support people who are trying to make a change.
I see.
And so that's why I ran against Doug Ford in Ontario. And again, I believe that he's an example of the kind of leader that we need to see less of here in Canada. Mm-hmm. So absolutely, that's why I was involved. I know why Tom was involved as well. And it's great to be surrounded by so many great people.
Mm-hmm. And what were your thoughts from the inquiry today? That was the first time that you actually went in person. How are you feeling being in the room in person?
Well, it's very interesting in some senses. It's surprising sort of that the room is not packed. I know there's a lot of people watching online and so forth and reading about it in the news, but it's not a packed room. There's not really that many people there outside of the people who are set to testify and the various lawyers that are there. So there's lots of room. Very interesting. I would say from my impression that the inquiry is being run in a fairly fair manner in the sense that it feels like they're letting everybody say their piece and a lot of very, really bombshell information is coming out and it's really painting the Liberals in a bad light. It's painting the whole invocation of the Emergencies Act again, as unnecessary. Mm-hmm. And it's exciting to see, frankly.
And how closely have you been following the inquiry for the past since the beginning?
Yeah, fairly closely. I mean, I haven't been watching every minute, of course, on TV, but anything that's spoken about in the news and so on, I've seen that.
And which testimony surprised you the most, or really caught your attention the most out of everyone that's passed? We had Jim Watson. Yes. We had failed Ottawa mayoral candidate Catherine McKenney. Yes. We had Zach Zili. Now your good friend Tom Marazzo.
Yes. Yeah. So for me, I think some of the most important information, really the OPP intelligence chief, I believe.
That's right. Yeah.
That individual. Some great stuff came out of that testimony. So basically. Again, I didn't. So I read a news summary about what he said, but what I understand he did in part was to basically blame the media for sensationalizing the news that was coming out about the truckers' convoy. Yeah. And he basically said, "Listen, there wasn't any real evidence of any extremism or violence, and the media had a part to play in blowing this way out of proportion." Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that we all would have known that before. But it's great to have somebody on the record testifying to that.
Yeah. And were you in Ottawa during the Freedom Convoy?
Yes, I was.
Yeah. So for our viewers at home that haven't really been following the commission, I think it would be great to show one of the clips from Keith Wilson, clip number 2, talk about the truckers that arrived in Ottawa and their intent when arriving in the capital of the country. Let's take a look at that clip.
Was never just to move up to Wellington. It was always recognized that probably only 25% of the vehicles could go to Wellington. The more dominant theme of the plan was for the vehicles to move to the remote locations at Embrun, Exit 88, and Arnprior, and to have expand the shuttle buses that were already running. And there was also, this is a very important point, and I don't know that it's come out yet, is a lot of people who were there, the truckers, never planned to stay that long. But the Canadians they met along the way, and the stories and the heartache that they heard, and the trust and plea that they heard from those people, many of the truckers I talked to felt this obligation to stay as long as they could, but they also needed a way to leave gracefully and respectfully. And one of the things we recognized was that if 75% of the vehicles were going to be given an opportunity to leave and go either to Embrum or Arnprior, that some would actually use it as an opportunity to go home and do so respectfully. So that was an important part of the plan.
Is that what you've been able to notice during your time here in Ottawa, during the Freedom Convoy?
Oh, just that it was a respectful protest and things like this?
Well, that was respectful.
Yeah.
People weren't planning on staying for a long run. However, they did decide to stay for a long run after seeing the issues that were at stake and the civil liberties that were basically fighting for.
Yeah. So my impression of the trucker convoy is that it was, again, a very organic movement that really materialized not because of the leadership of any one person or group of people, but just because of Canadians sort of having enough and being fed up with what was going on in the government. I think that when the convoy started taking on a life of its own from the beginning, in terms of, you know, adding more and more trucks to the convoy as it was coming from different areas of the country. And I think when people got here, one thing I noted when I was here is that, you know, the atmosphere was just so peaceful, even though it was, you know, almost 30 degrees below zero. It was almost like it was a mixture between like a family reunion and like a festival. And I think people just really were so proud to see so many people like them across the country. They were so glad to see, Canadians rallying together that it continued to evolve into what it became.
Yeah, and you know, while we're seeing it on the screen, I want to give you some time to address it in your view. We saw a few pictures only of a swastika flag being flown the whole time. We saw a Nazi flag being flown, and I feel the mainstream media blew all of this out of proportion.
Yes,
is that the general sense that you had? You talked about how peaceful it was. Did you feel it was a Nazi protest or a large neo-Nazi swastika racist presence in Ottawa?
So I believe the media deliberately tried to portray the trucker rally as something that it wasn't from the beginning. I think that's very clear. I mean, I remember one headline in the Toronto Star saying something along the lines of, you know, the trucker rally is white supremacism in all its glory. No, absolutely not. When I was there, I saw all different kinds of people, all different kinds of skin colors. There was a significant contingent of, natives there. There's a lot of French people. There was a lot of people of all different backgrounds. There was none of that there. This particular flag that was shown in the media, which I believe was taken in some corridor beside the hotel, the Chateau Laurier. I believe that again, I mean, that's not where the major that's not where the majority of people were. But again, who's to say who that was? Yeah. Maybe somebody was there just to discredit the movement, right? I mean, nothing's to stop anyone who's opposed to the truckers movement from coming and doing things that are discreditable. And we've seen that in other situations where you have, left-wing groups or other kind of groups that come in and try to discredit legitimate protests. So it could very well have been that, and it probably was.
Yeah, I think I agree with you, because one of the things that Andrew Lawson touched on when he came on the live stream a few days ago, he touched on the fact that he learned that the cameraman who was following those two guys holding swastika and Nazi flag was Justin Trudeau's cameraman. He was Justin Trudeau's photographer.
Sure.
I think it might have been staged. It's possible. I think there's a possibility that was the case. There's another interesting point that you touched on. I believe it was either Keith Wilson or Tom Morazzo that spoke about this during their testimony. There were a lot of Eastern European protesters at the Freedom Convoy. Yeah. And there's a clear reason for that. In Eastern Europe, that's Soviet Union, that's Russia. And these people, these older gentlemen that are living in Eastern Europe, remember how it was like during the Soviet Union. Correct. Or they have parents or grandparents that were living through a Soviet Union regime. And I think if those people are so attracted to the convoy because they see there's an important message there, I think Canadians should take a listen to that, because it means that those people who know what an actual authoritarian, communist regime, dictatorship, that type of regime, they know how it is. And I think the reason why they were so attracted to the convoy is because they saw Canada slowly moving towards that direction.
I think you're right. I think in my experience, almost anybody who has an Eastern European background or any experience with living in the Eastern Bloc has really, the light bulb has sort of come on during COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of these people see similarities with sort of what the government has done during COVID-19, especially, how they responded to the Freedom Convoy and other things as being exactly the types of things that they saw and experienced under communism. So I think these are lessons that we all need to consider. And it's good to see that so many people are waking up.
No, it's definitely great to see. Another thing that I also want to touch on is Doug Ford. You ran against Doug Ford, and we know that Doug Ford was summoned to testify during the inquiry. However, he's trying to fight it in court right now.
Correct.
What'd you make of that?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, it's an interesting legal argument they're using. I mean, the political reason why is they don't want to lose face for what happened behind the scenes. I mean, it's very clear that Doug Ford and his brother Rob Ford, when he was alive, they were, behind the blue collar guy. They were into, truckers and that kind of thing. And Doug Ford threw them under the bus. And I don't think he is proud of that moment in his life. And I don't think he wants whatever deliberations went back and forth between himself and Justin Trudeau and others to be brought out into the light of day. And so regardless of the legal arguments that they're making, I hope that he is compelled to testify. And I hope that the truth of this comes out.
Do you think he's running under the name of his brother? He uses Ford Nation a lot, which is a term that his brother used. Do you think that's tragic?
I mean, of course, right? I mean, the Ford brand for politically in this day and age is largely through his brother. Mm-hmm. And I mean, Ford Nation kind of, it refers to sort of, like the work hard, get it done, blue collar types. That's an association that, they've always reached out to. And frankly, he threw those types under the bus when he was in favor of this Emergency Act. So he should testify. And I hope he has to.
And while we have you on here, moving away a little bit from the trucker inquiry, because I'm curious to see your thoughts on that. Recently, Doug Ford decided to invoke the notwithstanding clause against the union of professor. Do you agree with Ford's decision to do that?
I believe that we need to take strong action to keep the schools open. Mm-hmm. As to the specifics of this negotiation, frankly, I mean, could it have been accomplished without? I don't know. I do know that what the union is asking for is a pretty significant increase. Yeah. And frankly, my opinion over the years is that this particular union and the teachers union can be hard to deal with. I mean, that's clear. They're certainly paid better than many other places around the world, and they always want more. So, whether they should have gone this route or whether it could have been, dealt with in another way, I don't know. But listen, kids need to go to school. Mm-hmm. The fact that they're trying to walk out right now, they're asking for, I forget, it was an 11% pay increase or something like that. High, yeah. It's very high. It's very high. The exact percentage. That's a lot. And frankly, we live in an environment right now where everybody is needing, the cost of living is going up for everybody. Not many people are getting massive raises right now. Mm-hmm. And I think the public service needs to remember that. I mean, they're free to, start their own business or take another career if it pays more, but we can't be expecting the government to up the ante all the time when it comes to things like this.
Yeah, one of the things that I find pretty funny is here's Stephen Lecce, the Interior Minister for Education, talk about the need for children to go back to school. We need to send our children back to school when you're the exact government that locks them up for 2 years in Ontario. Yes. And then don't you find it a little bit hypocritical?
Yeah, it is bizarre. I mean, it appears to one degree or another, the PCs have grown a pair, or at least are doing some things that are a little bit,
to a certain extent,
a little bit braver. Right. But, we have to remember, the government that we're talking about here, legislate, making sure that the schools stay open. That's the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. Not giving into, unfair union demands. That's the right thing to do as well. Yeah. So we'll see what happens.
Are you going to be staying here in Ottawa for the next few days during the commission?
It's going to be an exciting week, and we're going to be here for the next couple of days.
Well, that's very exciting. I look forward to seeing you at the commission.
Yeah.
Do we have any chats? Olivia or Efron for today? Sure. Well, we'll take a look. So you're going to be staying here in Ottawa for the next 3 days?
The next for sure tomorrow, possibly Friday, but there's definitely some exciting testimony. We have Tamara Ledge coming up. We have one of the infamous founders of the group that shall not be named is coming on Friday. And then there's also there's others there's Danny Bulford. Danny Bulford is testifying on Friday. So it's a packed week. And really, I mean, in some sense, I mean, obviously there's so many witnesses that are key witnesses, but I think Tamara's testimony is going to be one of the highlights of this whole affair. So that will be interesting to see, and we'll see what they can draw up. I mean, it's clear the government's approach is to try and tie this memorandum of understanding to an actual attempt to overthrow the government. Yeah, and they're also trying to connect this particular group to racism. And they're doing a pretty poor job of that. I mean, the memorandum of understanding is very clearly, a whimsical document drawn up by people who, don't really maybe understand exactly how things work here, but it was not in any way a legitimate attempt to have, some kind of a violent overthrow of the Canadian government.
Yeah, and I think that's what we're seeing right now. I think that's what the inquiry is revealing. Even the people that were against the convoy, I have a couple of friends that were opposed to the convoy while they were here in Ottawa, that were in favor of the Emergencies Act when it was first invoked. And then after listening to the inquiry, they're starting to switch their position because they're seeing that there was no such thing as an emergency during the convoy. Yes. There was no need to trample the civil liberties of protesters. Yes. There was no need to have an authoritarian, never seen before act and vote on peaceful protesters. I think people are actually seeing it.
Yes, I think you're right. I think the public impression of the inquiry is that really the Emergency Act shouldn't have been invoked. I think that's the takeaway.